it is your buddy Peace and Harmony with you here today. Much love going out to the Empowered Harmonizers, and a huge shout out to those of you who have recently donated to the channel. Thank you so much for stepping up to the plate and really letting me know that this content is hitting home with you. And thank you so much for your comments, sharing your stories, and your interaction here on the channel. It is so wonderful to have this community and do it in a place where it is in a very specific, results-oriented climate with which we hope to create here on the channel. And we're going to zoom in and focus in and getting started on a great viewer question, and that is really how to overcome the trauma bond that gets set up in a relationship with a cluster B personality, someone who is narcissistic, borderline, psychopathic, even verging into the antisocial personality. How do you get out of the funk, the blues, the down and outs, the depression, the kind of, and also getting beyond the addiction or the high that was set up from the relationship when everything else just seemed low, and you're wondering if the low is ever going to stop, if the high will ever be there again, and you're just kind of in a state of maybe despondency or apathy, or you're just kind of in kind of a floundering state where you're really kind of not really moving forward. Maybe you're not moving backward, or maybe you're moving backward or forward, or one step forward, two steps back. But either way, how do you really get beyond it? Well, for one, it's really important to understand in what ways that the high, or that was set up in the love bombing, was an addiction for you. And when we're in an addiction, just like when you see an alcoholic or a drug addict, they will compromise other areas of their life to get the drug, to keep it going. And they're neurologically out of control. Not neurologically, a little bit in terms of maybe like a thought disorder and not being able to think clearly, think realistically, think in their own best interests. But oftentimes their desire or craving for what they want will supersede what is right, what is moral, what is good, or common sense for them. In other words, the boundaries go out the window, the standards go out the window. You see the drunk lying in the street, the drug addict stealing, all the different things that they have to do to compromise, and really what I feel is like a self-abandonment, abandoning their self-preservation, abandoning their own gifts, abandoning really that positive, fulfilled relationship that is based on reciprocity and love and happiness and fulfillment. Since they don't have that, it's just they're just trying to go for a chemical high. So once you realize that, it's very important to understand and admit to yourself if this is indeed the case, because a certain amount of self-justification oftentimes does take place to keep this relationship going even beyond the times of its healthy situation. In other words, even all, the red flags that are there, the things that might have warned you or told you, like a viewer so aptly stated, who broke her wrist, and the narcissist said, how much is that going to cost? It wasn't even, oh my God, are you going to be able to recover? Are you going to write again? Can you be at a computer? Are you going to be out of work? They're just wondering how much it's going to cost. So these are the type of things where they're always just trying to egg you down or get you into a position of powerlessness. So you have to wonder if in the love bombing stage, if there was a certain of thrill or excitement, oftentimes there are dependency needs being met. Now we have healthy interdependency needs where it's healthy to be able to have people depend on you and then you likewise depend on them. It's a law of reciprocity. It is a healthy state of affairs. It's a checks and balances. It only makes sense. In other words, the right hand and the left hand are working together. But if one has dependency issues, in other words, the autonomy, the self-responsibility, the self-accountability, those stages are not being met or not being met successfully in the relationship, you can then have dependency needs created where inadvertently in a relationship with a cluster B, you can create a dependency or an addiction on this person where essentially you are dependent on their reaction for your sense of well-being. In other words, depending on whatever it is that they're going to do. Seeing them call, seeing them text, going out for dinner, maybe, looking and searching for them, or wondering, when is the next shoe going to drop? That sort of hypervigilance that gets set up in the relationship with these types of situations where there is a lot of instability. And so when we talk about dependency, it's very important to be rigorously honest with yourself and to admit in the privacy of one's own heart that you had perhaps made an error of judgment, and this person is not all that you had cracked them up to be, which oftentimes people want to hide from themselves because it's to admit a moral failing, either about their spouse, their family member, their coworker, their line of work, whatever it is, where you've encountered this person. Oftentimes there tends to be, after the excitement that is set up in the love bombing, there tends to be perhaps some degree of denial or repression because your boundaries are being challenged. Your self-belief is being challenged. And people oftentimes then, like a gambling effect, an intermittent reward system, they will do whatever is required to keep the narcissist around, to keep this person around if there's dependency needs that are kind of in a sort of insecure state within the relationship. In other words, I'm like, it's just the old, like, I'm living for you situation. I'm living, to hear you call. I'm living to hear you breathe. I'm, living to hear your this or your that. I mean, it's a dependency when you're not giving credit where credit is due to yourself, where basically, you have a certain degree of independence that you need to give yourself credit for. And if you have those dependency needs met, meaning, in other words, you have an external locus of control in your life, meaning that you are controlled by people, events, and situations rather than the other way around. Situations are the driving force and you are not the driving force. Oftentimes it becomes a relinquishment of free will that takes place even especially in the lost child syndrome, like Pete Walker talks about in his book. There is so very little positive mirroring going on, positive validation, that person's sense of self just gets dissolved. It's diffusive. And it can become kind of like, well, where is the center of control? Where is the center of me? Where is my I am? Where is my I am interested in? And they're afraid to open that up because of the relentless trauma, criticism, neglect, and basically crushing abandonment they have suffered in their young child years. So oftentimes this similar experience of being lost within oneself can occur in the love bombing phase, where it's this oceanic, it's not just me, the loneliness is temporary, and you have now having found this person and you no longer have the loneliness. So it can be a very ripe opportunity for dependency to be set up. In other words, if there is a vulnerability or a loneliness or an isolation or something with which oftentimes these people, particularly those who are psychopathic, tend to exploit in others when they see that someone is lonely or isolated or, very, very green, very naive. They have, it's good to have some degree of, of these things, in your life, that this is life. It's not all black and white. We have a whole spectrum of emotions and intermittent before, amongst these, but oftentimes these states are exploited and the cluster B person will very rapidly take control. And it's not good to have someone call all the shots in your life. You require to call the shots in your own life, meaning you have to be able to exercise and use consistently your own judgment, your own independence, your own sense of self-protection, your own standards, your own boundaries. And so a dependency on this person and how they make them feel can be like medicinal. And so oftentimes we see dependency needs getting set up. I can't live without this person. I'll never meet anyone like this again. Nobody loves me. All these stories that begun to come from ruminations and sort of trauma-induced flashbacks, which are really, tend to then run people's lives rather than people running their own life. So the dependency has to be very squarely dealt with. And when you talk about that, it's saying, okay, maybe I put too many eggs in this person in terms of, being good for me. I mean, how, maybe it was thrilling and exciting, but how thrilling is the devalue? How thrilling is the discard? How fulfilling is the paranoia? How fulfilling is the despondency? How fulfilling is the waiting? How fulfilling is it to be, waiting for someone else to reflect you back to you? And, so you have to realize, you have to really analyze and get into a mindful state, which is like the role of metacognition, the ability to think about what you're thinking about, or the ability to think about what you're experiencing and to say, wow, how am I getting swept away? Or am I becoming too dependent on this person? Or are they giving me the love? Are they showing me the love? Or am I only showing them the love? Am I only giving to them and I'm not receiving anything? And then having basically a realistic assessment of this, and then standing up for your needs, knowing what they are and saying, no, I don't deserve to be treated like this, to, go to an event and be abandoned in the middle of it, and, not to have conversation, not to have hand holding, or not to have, interaction where I have to chase and run after this person. So, certain boundaries you need to uphold, and then have the courage, the boldness, and the audacity to say no, that these are my qualifications that I need in a relationship. And if they're not these, sorry, but there is going to be next. You just have to have that faith and realize what are unhealthy dependency needs and how they look, feel like within you, and begin to address them. So you're not feeling like you have an external locus of control. We talk about this quite frequently on the channel, and it's very important to consistently over time to become more comfortable with an internal locus of control, which means you have leverage over yourself. You have the ability to make good decisions. You are exercising proper judgment in stating what is good and right for you. Where can you make your footprint? Where can you, what do you need to, see and take in? How do you need to nutrify your soul? How do you need to enhance your own internal real estate rather than having it devalued and discarded, vandalized, and, broken out the windows of your heart because this person was aggressive, or there was the, romance going out of control, or what have you. So, it is very important to say, being independent feels liberating. Independent feels free. Being independent, being my own person, is empowering. So, realizing through these new perspectives in a new winner mindset is so important, because you need to have that winning mindset, and at least to be equal, because if you're not in the equal, if you're putting yourself underneath, then, you're going to always have kind of a loser mindset, meaning I could lose. And you don't want to be under that sort of feeling where, I'm under the dependence or depending on this person. So there's a healthy dependence, but then there's an unhealthy dependence where you're then waiting for them to validate you. You need to validate your own needs, or whatever it is that you are kind of getting from them. You need to provide for yourself. So if it's a pat on the back, if it's a hug, if it's a hair stroke, you need to learn to give these things to yourself. take yourself out to dinner, the recovery date. I talk so much about that, how important it is to take yourself out and give yourself what you need. And then you rehearse this in a healthy way so that when you go on to your next romantic relationship, then you've got healthy practice. You know, you've got yourself. I got me. You know, I've taken myself out. I know what I can do. I know what my limits are. I know what my self-belief is. I'm worked on that. I've worked hard on my internal life, and it won't be marred or fogged out by a manipulator or an abuser, that I can see it coming and I know what it feels like. I know what it looks like. I know what it sounds like, so I know how to identify that. And those people will not be attracted to me because they can just tell through the internal work that I've done that I don't put up with that type of relationship. I'm not attracted to this type of person. I'm not attracted to this type of situation. I'm not surrounding myself with these circles anymore. I'm growing out of it. I am growing out of it. It is so important to know that you're growing out of it. It's just like the alcoholic who's in their 60s or 70s and they're still drinking like a teenager. It's like a drug addict rebel who, you know, can't get their, you know, their sales straight. They can't, you know, straighten up and fly right. They can't, you know, they haven't grown out of that rebellion mindset. They're still in the self-sabotaging of their, like a teenager, or someone who's just, you know, playing around, toying around. They haven't gotten serious. They haven't gotten professional. They haven't honed their internal mindset. They haven't honed their internal skills and become independent and knowing how to, you know, stand up for their own needs and knowing what their needs are and what their proper needs are. And as I say it, it's almost like if you look at a pie, you know, the slivers of their pie are not balanced. And, you know, in other words, their relationships, their spiritual, their physical, their financial, their professional, all the different components of your life, there's usually some that are really glaringly out of balance in the person who has the dependency need. So if that is you, then you need to kind of focus in on what areas of your life that you could use some support in. Could it be in a spiritual way, a physical way, a nurturing way, a way for your own interest, taking time to really develop and follow up on those. Even if it feels new, it feels different, it's because you're now focusing on these areas which have been hitherto not attended to or not worked in such a strong manner. And so it is taking, you know, it is taking the appointment book and scheduling these in. It is taking pen to paper and making it happen. It's showing up for your recovery date. It's showing up for the videos. It's showing up with your recovery gift. It's showing up for your moments. It is, you know, getting the appointment book and holding yourself to it. If you're not holding yourself to it, you're not exercising the free will that brings independence. You're not exercising the options of choice and the ability for you to see opportunities to change your routine a little bit and change it up, as they say, and then reap the benefits to say, I did it, you know, I did it. And even if it's difficult in the beginning, you know, inch by inch to cinch, foot by foot, or, you know, yard by yard, it's hard. Even if it's a little baby step, lots of baby steps, a more secure person it will make. And then once you're there, you will not slide back. So that's what's so important, is that once you get a real strong foothold, you have the foothold. It's like it's rooted within you neurochemically. And so that's why I encourage you to go and keep yourself accountable and independent for these tools, because you've got to use them to sculpt out and reinvent your life. You can do it. You can hold yourself accountable and enjoy the independence, liberation, and freedom that it comes from protecting yourself, knowing yourself, loving yourself, knowing that you're magnificent, and being able to scream it out loud and not feeling guilty, horrible, ashamed, or any of the other toxic feelings that oftentimes the cluster B people who you might have encountered or who are trying to control or manipulate you, who are oftentimes out of jealousy, trying to keep you from feeling in your first place. You are number one. It is your buddy, Peace and Harmony, with you here today. And I hope that these videos do help. Please share and please subscribe for more great tools, videos, discussion, and support. Love you.